In March 2019, Sir James Bevan, who was Chief Executive at the Environment Agency at the time, presented at the Waterwise Conference, and he summarised that we are 25 years away from what he called the jaws of death. And he finished that presentation on the exhortation that we need everyone to take responsibility for their own water usage. He talks in the presentation about the fact that in all water companies' business plans, there was a graph. And on that graph, there were two lines. The first, which showed an increase, was the water demand over coming decades. And the second was the water available to supply that demand. And where the two crossed, he called the jaws of death, the point at which the demands outstrip the supply. Whether it's jaws of death or day zero, seems to be the current phrase, we are now 15 years away from that point, and it isn't moving. So I'm Kevin Wright. I'm the Chief Brand Officer of a company called Showerkap. And what I'd like to do over the next 5 or 10 minutes is to explain one thing, offer one thing, really, is the answer to the question, what could we do? Because I think we can all agree on one truth, water scarcity is one of the most pressing challenges of our time. So what can we do about the 2 billion litres of water that we're all collectively flushing down the drain every day? And how can we all think and act differently about tackling our excessive water usage? So Sir James suggested 3 steps to avoid the jaws of death. Step 1, understand what's going on. And I think what we can also agree on is you'd have to be living under a rock not to know that we've got a bit of a challenge with the water issues currently. Worldwide, certainly, and as we're aware of, in this country particularly. Headlines this year have already talked about water shortages in the southeast, and already the pitch is being rolled for water shortages and hosepipe bans this summer, despite the wettest 18 months since record began. Now, if you spoke to over half of us, we would say that we're worrying that the UK is going to run dry with water in 25 years. And the majority of us would say that we're willing to reduce our water use for the sake of the environment. But the fact is that the vast majority of us have simply no idea how much water we're actually using. On average, an individual in this country, according to WaterWise, uses 150 litres of water a day. 67% of us think one household uses less than 69 litres, and around 21% think one household is using 19 litres or less, which in fact is barely enough for 2 toilet flushes. And our showering habits are still leading to excessive water waste, high costs, and negative environmental impacts. And we only have to look at the average shower times by age to see that. 14 to 16-year-olds, 21 minutes, and towards the older age of population, we're talking about 5 minutes, nearly 6 minutes. Even using a very low flow, 10 litres a minute, for a 14 to 16-year-old, that's 210 litres every shower. And even in the older age groups, that's nearly 60 litres. So it's making that 150 litre average look a little bit thin, let's say. And it's not just individuals. Industry too has got a role in managing the water consumption to protect the communities they operate in and their own business's future. 40% of the global population faces water scarcity, 25% are living in areas of extreme high water stress, and yet for us going on holiday, we could be staying in a hotel that's using 1,500 litres of water per room per day. And in some places, that's 8 times more than the local population per head. Cape Town faced a water crisis which cost around 65 million shortfall in the hospitality industry. And already this spring, we're seeing social strife in Spain, Mallorca, and the south of France, the European holiday destinations, where there is now talk about putting meters into hotel guest rooms. So, step 2, according to James Bevan, do something about it. In 2021, Nathan Richardson, who's head of policy at Waterwise, suggested that in the digital age we live in, consumers expect instant access to information and high-level service to make quick decisions. He suggested providing water use data and targeted nudges to save water would be the future. But there's no one answer. Technology can certainly help by creating sustainable solutions, but the fundamental issue is about our own behavior. We need a parallel transformation in the way we interact with it. We've got to reimagine our relationship with water, and we've got to learn how to do more with less. Essentially, how do we value every drop we've got? Step 3, according to Bevan, think and act differently. And in essence, that's what we at Showerkap have set out to do. Think and act differently about the problem. And funnily enough, we did it by putting water data at the fingertips and using targeted nudges with 3 simple pillars. A quite clever shower cap valve, which goes into the bathroom environment, an ability to capture the data from that valve to see what is going on at a granular level, to be able to assess costs, volume, temperature, water safety, and at the same time using the same database to be able to match targeted nudges or encouragements or prompts to help people make better choices about how they're using their own water. So it's a 3-pillar system. And to briefly look at that in a little more detail, in the bathroom, we have the shower cap valve, the central hub. Water coming into the bathroom can be monitored, temperature and flow, both through the shower and through the other outlets. And the flow meters can monitor temperature, flow, and time. The valve itself can be controlled to a set point, so time and temperature can be controlled remotely. The data capture is then sent to a cloud-based system where we've got detailed analytics. Those analytics can empower management, engineering, sustainability with targeted and detailed insights into actually what's going on with water, whether it's temperature, whether it's the flow volume, whether it's CO2 emissions, leak detection, and alarms on tap flow, for example. The same data through a data pipeline can be used through a system we've called nudge tools, where we can nudge individuals to choose to make better choices by matching their heuristics or the shortcuts that we use to make better choices and the incentives that they may have to be able to change their behavior because they're interested in rewards or interested in promulgating how well they're doing. And then they can actually start to engage with the valve and make their own choices about their own set points, their own flow, and how they're choosing to use their water and be nominated and rewarded for it. The final element in the shower itself is the patented hard nudge, which allows the shower to be faded in temperature over time. And what that does is it essentially simulates water running out. So it reintroduces what we call the shower time signal, the prompt that there used to be that water was actually going to run out, to encourage people to shorten their shower and step out. And in practical terms, what does that look like? If we were talking about big water users, let's say hotels, a hotel with 21,000 rooms, if we can encourage average behavior from 8 to 4 minutes, just on these measures of how much CO2 am I saving, how much water am I saving, and what cost does that look like at current pricing, we're looking at the tune of nearly £2 million. If we were looking at a university campus with 9,000 students, encouraging that cohort to change their showering habits from an average of 11 minutes down to 4 minutes, and we're looking at 1.2 million CO2, 227 million litres of water, and a cost saving on average of around 1.1 million. So it's significant. And even down at a home level, it would ripple down to the situation where an average family of 4 could save at current prices £750 a year. So when we started, we said we could offer a take on how we could all think and act differently about flushing over 2 billion litres of water down the drain every day. We said, understand the problem. We said that most people don't have any idea about their water, and we suggested 3 pillars that could help, if you like, push all the buttons to effect change and act differently for measurable change. A Nexus valve unit is targeted to sell at sub 250, and they're designed to self-fund. And the Marshall and Ripple are, in a way, the effective sustainability Strava, the ability to be able to encourage people to make a change difference, and they're designed to self-fund. We agree with Sir James when he said we can do this. We did it with plastics, we did it with smoking. At the moment in the UK, we're using 150 litres a day per person. Waterwise think that that could be brought down to 100 litres a day by 2050, and in Denmark they're already looking at use of areas of 80 litres per person. This really isn't rocket science. Water efficient appliances, using full dishwashers, taps off when brushing teeth, and just being a bit smarter about when we're watering our lawns. But above all, the biggest use of water domestically, shorter showers. If we got down to 100 litres a day, stopped up leakage by 50% and did nothing else, there'd be enough water for another 20 million people without taking from the environment. But the simple fact is, we're not going to have long-term water security unless all of us change our behaviour. So what do we want to do? We want to engage a coalition of the willing. We want to be talking to advocates and opinion formers who want to make a change. We want to talk to strategic partners, hotels, universities, water industry stakeholders, and of course, investors who can help us scale and bring our solution to market in volume. And we want to speak to what we've called the ripplers, the people that can affect change, the big water users. The big water users that can join us to think and act differently about one of the most pressing challenges of our time. And finally, what are we going to do? What are we collectively going to do? How about starting with making every drop count? And how about just choosing to take a slightly shorter shower?